members of the Diplomatic Corps, foreign guest speakers present, members and staff of and directors of the Energy Chamber, captains of industry in the energy sector, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a hearty good morning. Good morning. It is my pleasure to stand among such an esteemed group of persons who have in one way or another made their mark in the energy sector, and to share with you some of my thoughts on the way forward, specifically from the perspective of the electricity sector. I'd like to take this opportunity again to congratulate the Energy Chamber for putting together a well-run seminar so far. I think they deserve a round of applause. I am particularly impressed with the trade show, and I was glad to see, coming and growing up in the energy sector myself, the depth of which the people are participating and the amount of different companies that we have who are adding value to the sector. And I'm extremely glad to be part of this CARICOM or Caribbean speakers this morning. I've actually learned a lot, especially from our friend in Suriname. Is really glad to see that you could run a very integrated petroleum company or energy company, and with that type of profits of over 300 million EBITDA, I am really heartened like that. We probably could learn a little bit from you. There can be no doubt that renewable sources of energy are the way forward, not just for the world, but for the region and for Trinidad and Tobago. As a small island state locked just below the hurricane belt, we are well aware of the impact of global warming and the resultant climate change. Several studies have shown of recent changes in our climate, including the upward trend in temperatures. And the last year has made us painfully aware of our vulnerability as a region and as a country to extreme weather conditions. The fact that we are here in the middle of January and experiencing rains almost every day is indeed a clear indication that seasonal patterns are now in flux. Our recognition of these and other factors led to the signing of the Paris Agreement of 2016, which involves a commitment to achieve a reduction of 103 metric tons in our carbon dioxide emissions by the year 2010 to 2030. As the Minister of Energy said yesterday, Trinidad and Tobago is indeed starting from a good position because, as you know, for a very long time, all of our power plants were fueled by natural gas. Subsequent to the signing of the Paris Agreement, Trinidad and Tobago completed its National Determined Contribution Implementation Plan, NDC, which will serve as a roadmap as we move towards the aforementioned reduction in greenhouse emissions. That document is completed and, with Cabinet approval, will soon be made into policy. Government's vision, therefore, as outlined not just in the NDC implementation plan, but also in our 2030 vision document, includes placing the environment at the center of socio-economic development in Trinidad and Tobago. This, of course, must be achieved through the eventual and strategic transition to sustainable energy. The term sustainable energy has been defined, and I quote, "The provisioning of energy such that it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And as such, it has two key components, renewable energy and energy efficiency," end of quote. As I said before, there is no doubt that this is the way to go, and the government remains committed to securing a sustainable energy future for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It must be noted, however, that as the leading Caribbean producer of oil and gas, with an economy that is mainly based upon these resources, a balancing act of sort must be carried out. And so, I will outline for you some of the factors that must be taken into consideration even as we work towards adding renewable energy to our energy mix and fulfilling our international commitments under the Paris Accord. These factors and the various ways in which they intersect with our current socio-economic position will impact the rate at which we adopt renewable energy sources and the means by which we choose to do so. The first and most causative of these factors is, of course, climate change and our commitment, as previously stated, under the Paris Accord, which we are about to, as I said, which we signed and which we are very much committed to. The second is the state of our economy. You would have realized by now, and I'm sure we have been communicating that to all, that the Trinidad and Tobago economy is currently experiencing, I would say, some challenging times. We simply do not have the financial wherewithal to undertake huge capital-intensive projects of a national scope. And there can be no doubt, including renewable energy sources in our energy mix, will involve infrastructural projects of that kind. The estimated cost of meeting our stated goals in greenhouse gas reductions amounts to about $2 billion, which is expected to be met partly through domestic funding and conditional and international climate financing through the Green Climate Fund. The third factor involved the gas shortage that have plagued us over the past few years. Government continues to bring new gas reserves into production so that NGC can meet its contractual obligations and minimize any deficiencies. But the optimal use of our current gas supply is also of great importance. And since 8% of the gas produced by NGC goes to power production, it follows that any gains in this area will have a significant impact on the bigger picture. So, like the president of NGC yesterday, Mark Luquan, said, the opportunity costs associated with gas optimization in the area of power generation must be placed squarely on the table for discussion. The fourth factor is the projected development of the country and the resulting increase in the power demand. It is a well-known fact that we currently possess more generating capacity than we actually need, as is evident based on TNTech estimates, we will approach our optimal generating reserve margins of 20% by around 2025. Based on this reality alone, new sources of energy, be they renewable or otherwise, will not be needed until the next 5 to 7 years. As such, all we should be doing at this time is developing the infrastructural framework that would facilitate renewable energy sources coming online, while at the same time maximizing our efforts at efficiency and conservation. As I said before, these four factors forms the conceptual framework that surrounds our goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 103 metric tons over the next 12 years. And I will discuss them further from the perspective of the public utilities which fall directly under my purview, the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is actively pursuing all channels of improving productivity and efficiency at all levels of operation. And this is known to TNTech as they plan, operate, and maintain the electricity grid. As such, TNTech consistently monitors and seeks to achieve optimal efficiency in its operations. Currently, the two most efficient plants are the Trinidad Generation Unlimited TGU and power generation plants in Penal, both of which utilizes a relatively new high-efficient combined cycle. Over the past 2 years, we have been actively working at increasing TGU's dispatch, and we have been able to increase that dispatch from just over 40% to over 80%. The complete full high-voltage power transmission from that plant onto the national grid, however, requires compulsory acquisition of land to construct power lines from TGU to Union Estate. And we at the Ministry and TNTech are currently working towards resolving that situation, and as such moving that position from over 80% to close to 95 to 100%. Once that is done, TGU is fully once that is done and TGU is fully online, our most efficient plant will be shouldering the majority of the country's energy demands. This will result in a jump in efficiency in the Commission's operations, with direct results in monetary gains to the country. TGU aside, the Commission continues to take steps to improve its system's efficiency. The commissioning of new substations and electrical equipment and the implementation of a reduced system spinning reserve in conjunction with the increased utilization of power from TGU resulted in an increase in inefficiency of over 30%. And we are looking to taking that position to over 35% in 2018, by the end of 2018. This resulted in a continued decrease in the amount of natural gas needed to generate 1 megawatt per hour of energy, as you can see from this slide. It should be noted that if TNTech continues to optimize its gas usage, thus using less gas to generate electricity, the excess gas can be sold to the downstream petrochemical industries. The benefit of this type of scenario would be the decrease in the use of foreign exchange to pay for the gas and the increase in earnings in foreign exchange when it is sold. In spite of these gains, the Ministry of Public Utilities, as the Minister of Public Utilities, I continue to push TNTech to leverage its contractual and partnership arrangements with its power providers to encourage improved efficiency and optimization at their ends. In this regard, I see efficiency as a journey, not a destination. And so the Commission has earmarked certain energy efficiency initiatives to be implemented in the not-so-distant future. They are listed above. We must be aware, however, if we are to be successful at the development of a more sustainable energy and electricity sector, that the efficient use of energy is not just the remit of government or TNTech. The people of Trinidad and Tobago currently benefit from an electricity rate of 5.2 US cents per kilowatt hour before tax. This represents about 15% of what is paid by our neighboring countries. Unfortunately, the heavily subsidization of our electricity, whilst encouraging development in our manufacturing sector, has led us to develop habits and lifestyles that are not energy efficient. It is now very fashionable for our employees to wear coats, and in the case of my wife and my daughter, actually winter coats, to work because of the low temperatures that are maintained in our air conditioning in their offices, and I dare say even in our churches, which is sometimes even distracting as you try to pray. In an effort to change this existing mindset, the MPU alongside TNTech will be instituting an aggressive national public awareness campaign centered around the conservation and efficient use of electricity. You know, and we hear about a lot of companies getting involved in CSR activities, which is great. But you know, one of the things that I would like to encourage all of us here as we look at is to really be part of energy conservation campaigns. That is almost as important as CSR campaigns because it will lead to a benefit, a financial benefit to the country. In keeping with the maxim charity begins at home, the MPU is also in the process of preparing a policy outlining the ways in which government ministries can efficiently and effectively conserve electricity. That policy will soon be presented for implementation. But even as we consider and implement ways of increasing efficiency, both in power generation and in our utilization of that power, TNTech has also made inroads in the field of renewable energy. These projects include the completion of a pilot solar project and a small-scale wind resource survey in Tobago, the development of a manual titled Wiring for Renewables in anticipation for renewable energy implementation at the domestic level, collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards and the government's Electrical Inspectorate to establish standards for certifying equipment and building wiring, and the provision of assistance to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries in the development of a national renewable energy policy and the feed-in tariff policy for Trinidad and Tobago. That feed-in tariff will facilitate access to the national grid for renewable energy projects, and in so doing, will encourage interested parties to develop these projects. The MPU is scheduled to amend the TNTech and the MPU Act, which will support the policy once established. Let us turn our attention back to the initiatives being undertaken by TNTech. Due to the piloting projects done by the Commission and the data collected, TNTech is currently in discussions with the Airport Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, looking at the feasibility of constructing a solar farm in the vicinity of the Piarco International Airport. The MPU is also expecting that work on the wind resource assessment program would yield positive results that could lead to investments in new sources of power. But the point must be made that TNTech clearly has 4 PPAs with contractual payment obligations which guarantee them sufficient power until around 2025. The introduction of renewable energy and the utility scale at the utility scale before that time will see TNTech and by extension the country paying for electricity it does not need. We also, of course, have to also recognize that this has the additional benefits of saving our gas utilization, which could be monetized. The tipping point in this scenario, therefore, depends on the cost at which renewable energy sources will be brought onto the grid. Within recent times, we have noticed that renewable energy sources costs has been coming down dramatically, and I'm hearing figures at around 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That being we all could remember when figures of 16 cents was being touted. And so there is evident that the price gap between renewable and non-renewable energy sources is closing more quickly than expected, especially here in Trinidad. This fact, coupled with the challenges faced by the NGC in meeting its contractual obligations, mean that the calculations around adoption of renewable energy sources and the ensuing discussions and implementations must now be made a matter of national priority. What all of this means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the securing a sustainable energy future requires focused deliberation, strategic action, and collaboration on all fronts. Individual and households, businesses and the private sector, government and regional and international bodies, we must all put our hands on the wheel to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago benefits in the long term. Some of these benefits, as listed above, will take longer to materialize than others, but they will all lead to a better quality of life for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, a more resilient and sustainable energy source, and a brighter future for those who come after us. In conclusion, I would like to make the point that in spite of our oversupply of power, the government of Trinidad and Tobago stands by its commitment that it would have made as a result of signing the Paris Accord. And we are working assiduously to keep our promise to the population that we would secure 10% of our energy needs from renewable energy sources by the year 2021. If you do the maths, we recognize that will work out to around 200 megawatts. As such, we are working on the legislation that would facilitate the addition of renewable energy sources to our energy mix. And as you have recognized, TNTech has already done the manual. We do, however, expect that our primary collaborators will be the private sector. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries has, for example, advertised for expressions of interest for utility-scale renewable energy projects with a minimum generation capacity of 3 megawatts. And so, even as we lay the legislative and regulatory framework and bring the relevant discussions on efficiency and conservation to the fore, it is our hope that you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, will partner with us at every level. In your households, in your business and institutions, through your investments and projects. All hands must be on deck as we build a better and brighter future for our beloved Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you all for the time and attention and wish you all a good day.